I always knew this day would come. Me sitting in the forest, pretending to read a book about working deeper. But what I didn't know was that something was watching. Waiting. Was it a harmless creature? A wandering spirit? Or was I about to make my first contact with something extraordinary? A magnificent beast. And the beast I'm talking about is the beast I have right here. This is a Sigma 28-105 DGD&Art f2.8. Now let me break this video down and tell you what's going to happen here. So the first part of this video we are going to go ahead and look at the technical side of this lens, see what all the fuss is about, see what lens has to offer, and then at the end of this video gonna share my own personal thoughts on this lens. And if you're looking into getting this lens, hopefully by the end of this video we will have figured that out. This is actually a lens that I consider getting myself. So with that said, this is not my lens. This is a lens I borrowed in order to do this review. I'm going to talk more about that at the end of this video, but I know you guys hate the yapping, so we're just going to dive straight in. But first things first, my name is Niclas, and if you're new to this channel, hello and welcome. And also, I would highly appreciate it if you decide to smash that like and subscribe button. Alright, so let's start off with the build and features of this lens. Now you have to bear with me because there is a lot of things going on the outside of this lens, but let's start all the way at the top here and work our way down. Now first off, the focus ring. The focus ring itself feels good, nice and smooth, there's no complaints here, but there are some things with the manual focus itself to address. Now on a Panasonic camera you have the option to switch between linear and non-linear focus mode, but on Sony this lens is stuck in a non-linear focus mode. So the problem with this is that when I try to do slow focused pulls, it's very hard because the focus response is always fast on this lens. So even when I turn the ring as slowly as possible, it still reacts at a medium to fast speed, which makes precise gradual adjustments difficult on this lens. Alright, so when we move one step further down, we find a zoom lock switch, 2 function buttons, and a AF/MF switch. And next we get to the zoom ring that feels natural, and when you go from 28 to 105 it extends about 6 centimeters. Now at the bottom we have a click-declick aperture ring, meaning you can switch between stepped clicks or smooth silent rotation, whatever you prefer. And all the way over to the right there is another switch that locks the ring into the A position, which allows aperture control via the camera instead, and also stops the aperture ring from being accidentally rotated as well. Now for the weight on this lens, it comes in at almost 1 kilo, which is quite a bit more than the 24-105 f4 Sony G lens that came in at 661 grams. And something else about the Sony G lens is that that lens also features OSS, and this lens does not. But I would say that this lens more than makes up for it, considering it has a constant aperture of f2.8 throughout the whole zoom range. And finally, of course, this lens comes with a recognizable classical Sigma lens hood, and the filter thread size on this lens is 82mm. So to sum up the build, it's great, it feels premium, it is weather sealed with a rubber gasket at the bottom, it also features a great water and oil repelling coating, making it hard to leave fingerprints. So overall this lens is very suitable for diverse conditions. But as we all know, we need to be careful when that rain is pouring down. Alright, so moving over to image quality. Now taking a look at the sharpness first here at 28mm f2.8. It is extremely sharp in the middle with great contrast, maybe some softness all the way up in the corners if we're being picky, but we do get rid of that when we do stop down to f4 and f11. And at 50mm I found the sharpness to be pretty much the same as 28mm. But when we go all the way up to 105mm, we do lose a little bit of that extreme sharpness that we do see at 28mm and 50, but it's still very good. And we do also get some softer corners, but stop down to f4 and it gets a little better, but that's about it. So overall, very solid. Now also testing it here for distortion and vignetting without any camera corrections, and as we can see it is suffering a little bit from that mustache distortion, waving outwards, and we also see some vignetting here at 28mm, but I wouldn't worry too much about this considering, you know, camera corrections and how easy it is to fixing it in post. Quickly touching on flaring and contrast as well. Now this lens handles that super well, keeps the contrast really well in bright conditions, but you can get some ghosting and artifacts depending on how you angle your lens, so I always recommend to keep the lens hood on anyways. Now the minimum focus distance on this lens is 40 centimeters, both at 28mm and 105mm. This means you will get much closer at 105mm. This actually is so tight, it kind of gives me macro vibes here. And the same here with sharpness and contrast, it's really good both at 28 and 105. Alright, so let's talk about Bokeh. Now this lens has a 12-bladed iris, which is quite unique for Sigma actually. With these 12 blades you will also get very nice and round bokeh balls. Now I have to say I really like the bokeh on this. In my opinion this is really one of the better ones, and the same with the balls there in the corner. We get more hints of those cat's eyes of course, but still very solid. And the same can be said with the background, it blurs out really smoothly, very creamy, I really like it. Now again, as I said, because this lens has a 12-bladed iris, that means you will also get 12-point Sunstars. And most Sigma art primes and zooms usually use 9 or 11 blades, so it kind of makes this 12-bladed iris on this lens stand out a little bit from the rest. Now why Sigma did this, I don't know, but I'm guessing it was to, reach a little bit higher with this lens, making it a little more premium, make it stand out a little bit more with smoother, more pleasing bokeh on top of that. Okay, so moving over to the focus department. Now starting off with the autofocus. Now the newer Sigma lenses have extremely good autofocus with faster, more advanced motors, and this lens is no exception. It's fast, it's snappy, and it catches on fast to your subject. It is very, very reliable. Now, and something else that is outstanding on this lens is the focus breathing. I think it's fair to say that it's basically non-existent on this lens. So let's take a look at an example here where I do test my size 85mm that does suffers quite a bit from focus breathing. And if you keep an eye on the edges of the frame here, you'll see that we do get a lot of that unwanted zoom effect on the size. And if you compare that to the Sigma, we'll see that it is basically non-existent. Now, because this isn't a native Sony lens, us Sony shooters out there can't use a feature called focus breathing compensation, which usually takes care of that focus breathing, which means that it's even more valuable to have less focus breathing in a third-party lens, so this is a big W for Sigma. Now, if you want to, you can also hammer this lens onto your APS-C camera. Congratulations, you now have a 42 to 157.5mm. Now, usually something that's really great with APS-C and full-frame lenses is that you do get extreme sharpness here as well, but I did find that on my ZV-10 Mark II, using this lens at 105mm, it wasn't really performing that good in terms of sharpness. They had much softer corners. Besides from that, it is a very good lens that you can use on your APS-C camera to get a different focal range if you want to do that. And lastly, of course, we do have to touch on the price. Now, in Norway, where I live, this lens goes for 18,821 Norwegian kroners, which is going to be $1,695. Now, the price, of course, is going to be different from where you live. I know that we here in Norway, we do have a lot of tax on this stuff. It is a hefty price tag, but it's also a hefty lens. That is what this lens has to offer in terms of the technical stuff. Now, what do I think of this lens, and is this lens something you should get? That is the question of the day, and the truth here is that this is probably one of the better lenses I have reviewed lately, and I don't really have any negative things to say about this lens. And I would say that the biggest con of this lens is going to be the weight and the size, but that is also kind of the biggest pro, because it's very rare to come by a lens that has such a great versatility, going from 28 to 105 with a constant f2.8 aperture, and at the same time keeping the weight and the size as low as this lens does. It's kind of weird to give it that con, but again, it is heavy, but it's not heavy for what it is, if that makes sense. So at the start of this video, I said that this lens is a lens that I might be getting myself, because this isn't my lens. I borrowed this lens in order to do this review, and for those of you who don't know, I study something called media production here in Norway. I'm very lucky that my school does have a lot of equipment, so I can basically book this lens whenever I want over the next 2 to 3 years while I'm studying there. And if I wasn't studying and wasn't in school, this is definitely something I would be looking towards as well. Now, I like buying my lenses used, so you can't really do that with this lens yet, because, it was just released. So I think I would wait at least. But if you have the money and you're ready to spend that money on a lens and you're looking towards getting this lens, guess what I'm trying to say is that it's very unlikely that you will be disappointed. Also, if you do want to pair this lens up with another lens, I don't think you need to look any further than its little brother, the Sigma 16-28 f2.8, which is also going to be another review I have coming up soon if you want to stay tuned for that as well. But just to sum this lens up, it is a workhorse of a lens, and it's also very sharp. Autofocus is fantastic. It has little to none focus breathing. And and something else I forgot to mention was chromatic aberration and color fringing. Now, I didn't find any issues with that, but I did watch Gerald Undone's review of this lens, and he had some more things to say about that. So it was something about how you angle it or something like that. If you haven't seen that video yet, I highly recommend you go and check that out. One of my absolute favorite YouTubers out there. Alright, with that, I'm gonna leave you, and thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to smash that like and subscribe button before you leave. Take care, have a good day, and I'll see you guys in my next review.